West Indies. I think a lot of people, certainly myself included in that, overrated the West Indies last time. I'm still not sure that they're as bad as their actual results ended up, and they kind of phoned in the last bit of the tournament, and there was a lot of odd stuff going on. And it was an odd tournament even coming in. But you look at that team, and they got rolled for 55 in their first game. They lost to Sri Lanka and South Africa, snuck home against Bangladesh, and as I said, almost ended up turning the last game into a Chris Gayle benefit match.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
It was a horrible tournament for West Indies cricket, really. Although, if we're looking for trends, it seems to be that they're good in every second T20 tournament, so maybe that's what was happening. I think the strength of the West Indies is they've played a lot of T20 in the last 2 years. Nicholas Pooran has played 46 T20 internationals. West Indies have played one more than that. While they certainly have cycled through kind of everyone who's ever been to the Caribbean, even on holiday, they've at least given many players experience and tried everyone out in probably at least one or maybe a couple of roles. I mean, having said all that, they've only won 16 of those matches, so it's not been great. But with a younger and unsure side, I think the best part was to play as much as possible. And the other strength is, as patchy as their batting lineup looks, they could possibly have a lineup, if they wanted to, of Lewis, Mayer, Pooran, Powell, Holt, Hussain, and Odean Smith. That's a lot of sixes and a lot of bowling talent within just that group. I mean, I'm not saying it's great, but it's certainly something. Of course, that list should have included Shimron Hetmyer. In fact, that list did include Shimron Hetmyer in my original draft. But he didn't fly, did he? And I suppose that's a huge problem for them, because he doesn't seem to have wanted to play that much for them even before this World Cup, and now he's not even turning up there. There's many other players who have said for the West Indies, I'm not going to play in bilaterals, but they usually make themselves available for World Cups. He's currently their best batter, as Pooran is looking to find that original form. And he's not even the only player who's not there. Andre Russell is not there. Sunil Narayan is not there. Kieron Pollard just retired. We said at the last World Cup that they went in with a slightly older team, but you would like a little bit more experience than what we're currently seeing in this lineup. And their bowling's still a problem, as it was in the last tournament. Obed McCoy made it worse in the last tournament by getting injured, and he's kind of their only death bowler. They've actually been using Akil Hussain there quite a lot, but I think he'll struggle to do that in Australia. There are only 2 bowlers in their squad who are going at less than 9 runs and over in the last 2 years. West Indies have been going at 9.5 in that time. So it's not ideal. Holder goes at 10s, and they're probably going to have to use him. Rutherford played himself out of the squad because of his death bowling. Odean can only bowl there when there's an absolute emergency. And Sheldon Cottrell is an up-front bowler. It's hard to see how their bowlers are going to be able to help them if their batters just don't make enough runs. And it's not their only bowling problem. Their second spinner is Yannick Correa. And if you haven't heard of him, that's more than okay. Pretty much no one has. In 2021, he didn't even play a professional game of cricket. His last T20 before being picked in this squad was 2016. He's a leg spinner who can hold a bat from Trinidad. And him being picked shows just how much this team is desperate for any wicket-taking options. He does have a decent List A record, but he's 30, has played 25 professional white ball matches. The entire selection is bizarre. There's no doubt that the worst case scenario is a possibility, which is that West Indies will not qualify for the next round. I think you'd still look at Group B and make them favourites, but probably not by as much as they would traditionally be. If Ireland get their act together and Scotland's batting just fires a little bit better than it has been, this suddenly becomes a really tough group, and we haven't got to Zimbabwe yet. If the West Indies are bowling at the death of one of these games and they haven't quite scored enough runs, and Harry Tector or Michael Leask is smashing the ball around with only Obed McCoy to stop them, they could be in for a hell of a dogfight. Obviously, the best case scenario is them qualifying quite easily for the first round, probably with 3 comfortable wins. And I don't think once they're in the second round, they're a realistic chance of making the finals, but perhaps just winning 2 games would be enough to think that they were on the right path. But looking at this squad, I mean, I feel like that's really optimistic at the moment. And that may depend on who qualifies from the other group. Perhaps in a best case scenario situation where Pooran and Smith and Jason Holder all have the tournaments of their life, maybe they do slightly better, but I just don't see it happening. 2016 was the last time the Zimbabwean men were in a World Cup. That's quite a long time ago now, and that's ODI or T20. Williams, Raza, Jongwi, Chitara, and Wellington Mazakatsa are the players who were in that squad, who are going to be turning up this time. That team actually made the second round. Well, I think they did. I was there. It was a long time ago. I think their strength is Sikandar Raza at a certain point. He's been a fantastic player for them for a very long time, but his last 2 years have been incredibly special. In that time, he's been averaging 27 with the ball while going at 6.7 runs per over. It's on low usage, and so some of it is because he was well used. But regardless, that's lovely. And with the bat, he averages over 30 while striking at 145. That's a hell of a combination. There's a few better teams in Zimbabwe around who wouldn't mind an all-rounder like that. Also, because he's an off-spinner, he combines really well with Ryan Bell, who's the leg spinner you probably first heard of when he couldn't find his shoes, and then you heard of him later when he destroyed Australia in a one-day international. Bell's obviously more of a bowler, but he can also hold the bat, so it means that they have two players who are probably going to bat in their top 7 who can both bowl. And on top of that, they spin the ball in 2 separate directions to each other. It's a bit like what Moeen Ali and Ravi Jadeja do at Chennai, just obviously a bit of a lower res version. If you have a look at Scotland, their 2 best finger spinners are left arm orthodox, which means it's really hard to get both of them into the team unless they're playing a bunch of right-handers. But on spinning decks, Zimbabwe can play extra batters, and they can play match-up cricket, or on a pitch that favours seam bowlers, they can pick Raza just to be a frontline batter. It gives them a huge amount of flexibility. I think their biggest problem is that they don't really score a lot as a team. They have struggled against most bowling units to really get over 160, and that seems to get lower the more talent they come up against. And this is through a combination of players with low average and low strike rate. It's not particularly an easy thing to fix if your players don't score big and they're doing it slowly. You look at this, and outside of Raza, there really isn't a player who combines average and strike rate at all. You get one or the other, and I can't see how they're going to make enough runs against good bowling units. The worst case is clearly this is the first tournament they've been in 6 years, the last time they made the second round, and this one they just sweep straight back out of. And it's very possible. All 3 teams that they're going up against do probably have the batting ability to make scores that perhaps Zimbabwe can't reach. Also, while Zimbabwe may not be an Asian team, they do play much better on turning lower tracks. Zimbabwe spins a lot. That won't help them in Australia. However, they do have a nice bowling lineup. They have seam talent and spin variety. And perhaps they only need 2 good games and 1 helpful service, and the second round is a legitimate possibility. Once there, I don't see them doing that much, but I also didn't think they would be able to roll Australia in a one-day recently. The fact that they're back is already a win for them, and maybe that is the best case scenario.